exactly fundamental duties, but it is just a reminder for all of us as a citizens, then how we can create a free, healthy, and a responsible society. Because we all know the nature of the fundamental duties as given in the Constitution is not enforceable. So the main theme of this FDP, which is constitutional values, it has been a very apt theme which has been chosen by the organizers of this FDP. And this constitutional values will remain all-time contemporary for a democratic nation which is governed by a rule of law. And India is a country which is set to be governed by rule of law. So it is very, very important to note that constitutional values provide a foundation. You should say it's provide a framework for promoting the humanitarianism and social welfare. So we as citizens must know that what are those several constitutional values that can serve as a way forward to ignite the humanitarianism, and which may also promote social welfare. Because without promoting social welfare, without promoting for the humanitarianism, we cannot claim ourselves to be a good citizen. And once we are not a good citizen, then of course we cannot generate a responsible society. So for that, we need to work on some of the constitutional values first that you all must be knowing regarding equality that promotes the fairness. That has to be one of the constitutional value which we find not only in the preamble to the Constitution, but also as a fundamental right. Then justice is another value, because a just society that upholds the rule of law. And this justice is just to provide the equal protection under the law that fosters the humanitarian values, that fosters and that contributes to the social welfare. Because it is just to ensure the individuals that they are being treated fairly, they are being respected, their rights are being promoted. So justice is another value which may be promoted for the social welfare. Then besides equality and justice, we find that human dignity. That is another constitutional value which needs to be functional to promote the social welfare in the society. So for that human dignity, if we see that the human dignity is to be there, so we have to find that this human dignity is just to recognize, it has to uphold the inherent dignity of every individual. Because this is one of the very important fundamental constitutional value, which is to promote the social welfare. Liberty is another one. So we find the liberty, dignity, and justice, equality, all these virtues, all these values in the preamble to the Constitution of India, and they are very, very important. So solidarity is there, integrity, unity. And if we have to work for the promotion of the social welfare, if we have to work for the bringing a responsible society, to create a responsible society, then it is required that we must all follow these values also. Because however, the effective implementation of these values, this requires not only the participation of the individuals, but this is a combination of the commitment of the concerned government. It is the commitment of the institutions, the civil society, and of course, individuals to uphold in practice all these constitutional values. And here comes the role of the citizens as one of the stakeholders to perform their fundamental duties. Because once we perform our fundamental duties, rights will come with that duties also. So if we see that besides legislative measures, policies, programs, that can translate the constitutional values into the real actions and outcomes, just to ignite the humanitarianism and just to promote the social welfare in the nation. So constitutional values have a direct link with what a citizen has to perform as the fundamental duty, because these values can be seen only when there is a performance of the duties by the citizen. So citizen can create by performing the fundamental duties, and the citizen can ignite the humanitarianism. The citizen can promote the social welfare in the nation also by performing the duties. So coming on the fundamental duties, if we see universally, then we find a great emphasis has been laid on the citizen's duty. Just take the example of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It is of 1948. And in this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 29, Clause 1 of that UDHR says that everyone has the duties. Everyone has the duties to the community in which alone his free and full development of the personality is possible. So that solidarity is very important, the justice portion is very important, and equality is also very important. And that's why you see the title of this document is Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but it speaks of the duty also, which is conferred upon everyone. So everyone has the duty to the community. And this universal acceptance of the duty, we find that in many countries throughout the world. It's not confined to India also, but in many countries throughout the world, they have evolved the ideas of the responsible citizenship in their constitutions. And we see that in the democratic society, the concept of citizenship has taken some new significance, content, and goals also. So while emphasizing rights, it is very, very crucial also to be serious about the duties of the citizens towards the nation, towards the society at large, especially in the light of the necessity of national safety and security, because India is one of the few nations in the world with a long, long history of the democracy. And we see that here the citizens have a reputation for carrying out their duties and obligations. An individual's kartavya, you see, is the fulfillment of one's duty towards the society, towards the nation, towards the parents. That has been emphasized since time immemorial. And we have also in our culture very, very rich epics like Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, etc., which enshrine the duty as the part of one's own dharma. You may be aware about what Lord Krishna ordains in the Gita, that one should do one's duty without expectation of any fruits. Like karmanyavadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karmphal heturvama te sangyosva karmani. So the very meaning of this ordain which Lord Krishna has given to Arjuna during this Mahabharata in this Gita, that you have the right to perform your actions, but you are not entitled to the fruits of the action. So do your duty, perform your duty. And this is what, if you see that in social solidarity, Digit, who is the professor of that, he was also of the opinion that to do your duty is your right. Your duty is towards the society. If you are performing your duty, then you will be having the rights also. So do your duty, that was the concept. And you see, according to Mahatma Gandhi also, the very performance of a duty is the sources of the rights. He was of this opinion, because he was of the opinion that rights cannot be divorced from the duties. So this is the culture. These were written in the epics. These were the thoughts of the very legend persons which were having this concept of duty in our country before the enactment or before the enforcement of the Constitution of India. So when we see the constitutional status of duty in India, then we find that it is indisputable that the authors of the Constitution, they didn't feel it acceptable to incorporate the duties in the text of the Constitution initially. There would have been various grounds for such absence in the light of the sufferings. And you see, because India was having the culture of this kartavya and duty, so the authors, they have thought that it is not required to put in the Constitution the duties portion. And secondly, you see, the Constitution initially is focused mainly towards the fundamental rights. And that was due to the sufferings, the exploitation, the oppression which the people have suffered during the British regime. So they more and more focused towards rights and not towards the duties, because that was the part of the Indian culture. So we find that in the original Constitution, the fundamental duties were not incorporated. However, the incorporation of the fundamental duties under Article 51A, that was the need of the time. We know that the idea of the fundamental duties in India, that has been borrowed from the Constitution of USSR as it was then. Now there is no USSR like things. So this idea was borrowed from there. And earlier, you see, Japanese Constitution was the only democratic state that contains the duties of the citizens. So in India, after receiving the recommendations from the Swan Singh Committee, that was during the emergency period, that the then Prime Minister Srimati Indira Gandhi, she appointed one committee under the chairmanship of Swan Singh. And that Swan Singh Committee has recommended certain duties. And after discussion and debate on that duties, which have been recommended by this committee, the Constitution was amended. And Part 4A of this constitutional amendment, that was inserted in the Constitution, which was consisting only of one article, that is Article 51A. And this Article 51A has added 10 duties initially. So if you go through those duties, then you'll find that these duties are basically moral in nature. These duties are civic in nature. If you see, respecting the Constitution, to respect the national flag, to respect the national emblem, to uphold the unity and integrity of the nation, to protect the sovereignty, to defend the country, and also to render the national services, to follow noble ideals which inspired the nationalist struggle for freedom. So the nature of these initial duties, these are civic in nature. These are coming under the civic domain, because we are having as a citizen the duty what to do, to abide by the Constitution. We have a duty that we have to respect the national flag. We have a duty to abide and respect by the national anthem also. And we have the duty just to cherish and just to follow the noble ideals which are there and has been taken by the our freedom fighters. So these are the duties which we can say that they are coming under the civic domain. They are having the civic nature. But as I told you, that there are duties also which are moral in nature, and these duties you will find that while preserving, we have to preserve the rich heritage, we have to preserve the country's composite culture, we have to promote the harmony, and we have to promote the common brotherhood, the spirit of the common brotherhood. The public property has to be safeguarded by all of us as a citizen. At the same time, we must have the compassion for the living creatures, whether that living creature includes the flora, fauna, birds, animals, everything. Then we have to protect and to improve the natural environment also. And a very important moral duty, that is to renounce the practices which are derogatory against the women and her dignity. So these are the moral duties which are the part of Article 51A. And these duties have been divided in 10 sub-clauses of Article 51A. which are related to the duties of the citizens in the country. So all these fundamental duties, those incorporated by 42nd Amendment to the Constitution in 1976. However, one more duty has been incorporated, it was in 2002 by 86th Amendment to the Constitution, and that is the duty for the parents and for the guardians to provide the opportunity for the education of their child or their ward from the age group of 6 to 14 years of age. So by 86th Amendment, this 11th duty has also been inserted in the Constitution under Part 4A of the Constitution. So presently, we find that we have the 11 fundamental duties. And fundamental duties were created to teach the Indians to live within a certain code of conduct. But very importantly, none of these duties are justiciable. When I say that it is non-justiciable, these are not justiciable, it simply means that one cannot go to the court of law if duties are not performed by the citizens. Like if there is a violation of the fundamental right, one can directly move to the Supreme Court under Article 32, under Article 226 to the High Court, that there is a violation of the fundamental rights and the person is going before the court of law to seek the remedy. So because the rights are justiciable. But in case of the fundamental duties, the very nature of the fundamental duties is that it is non-justiciable. And it is also very, very important here at this point to note that some of the recommendations which have been made by the Swan Singh Committee report were rejected by the then government. Regarding the enforcement of the fundamental duties, regarding the punishment and penalties on the citizens if they are not performing their duties. And also at the same time, you see that the duty to pay taxes, that was also suggested by the Swan Singh Committee. So these three important things which were also recommended by the Swan Singh Committee, and that is non-compliance of the duty is, if there is a non-compliance of the fundamental duties, then there would be imposition of the penalty and punishment on the citizens, and that punishment cannot be questioned in a court of law. That was a recommendation which was not accepted by that time when the duties were recommended by the Swan Singh Committee. Because the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, she was of the opinion that the moral value of fundamental duties would not be to overpower the rights, because when the Constitution was drafted, when the Constitution was framed at that time, more and more debates and discussions were only and only upon the fundamental rights and not on the duty portion. So she considered it at that time that it's a right-based society, and at that time, if we are giving more value on the duties by making it enforceable, by punishing the persons if they are not performing their duties, then wouldn't it be like to overpower the rights? So she was of the opinion that the moral values of the fundamental duties would not be smothered, it should not be overpower the rights, but to establish a democratic balance. A democratic balance by making people conscious of their duties equally as they are conscious about their rights. So moral value, that was the important pointer when these duties have been incorporated in the Constitution of India by 42nd Amendment in 1976. So it was considered that because the people, they were having these moral duties, they considered this their religious duty also to perform their duties, to do their kartavya, that is the dharma for them, and that was the ordain of the Lord Krishna also. So it would not be good to make them enforceable by non-performance, that the person should be punished or penalized, but there would be a balance between these two duties, and the people has to be conscious, the citizens have to be conscious about their duties, just like they are conscious about their rights. But one important thing which we see after the 42nd Amendment was that though the nature, as I told you, which have been incorporated were not justiciable, the 42nd Amendment was a controversial amendment. And this controversial amendment was also known as the mini constitution, because many of the provisions of the constitution were amended by this 42nd amendment, and this 42nd amendment took place during the emergency period. That was the greatest emergency and the dark period in the Indian democracy, and that during that period this 42nd amendment came into force, and it was considered to be a mini constitution also. So after this emergency was over, and the 42nd amendment that became the law. After that, a new regime came in at the center, and again there was an amendment, and the 44th amendment, that was very important, which has struck down many of the provisions which have been amended by 42nd amendment to the constitution. And one important thing which this 44th amendment has not done is that it has left the fundamental duties untouched, unaffected, and unharmed. That is to say that the fundamental duties chapter was not struck down by 44th amendment, and this shows how essential the fundamental duties were at that time also. So the inclusion of the fundamental duties that has brought our constitution in line with Article 29(1) of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. As I told you that at the universal level, we find Universal Declaration provides for the duty also. So by making this duty in our constitution as one of the part in the constitution, that has brought the constitution in line with this UDHR also, and also with other constitutions of the world which are having the provisions for the fundamental duties. So if we travel after 42nd amendment, then we find that the fundamental duties which have been incorporated in 1976, they were not stopped there. The duty regime was not stopped by 42nd amendment, and a few more developments also took place whereby we can know the importance and the significance of the fundamental duties for responsible society. So first, if you remember that there was Justice Verma Committee report of 1999. And this report of this J.S. Verma Committee, that has to suggest that how to teach fundamental duties to the citizens of India, because you see from 76 to 99, the duties were there, the part of the constitution, but the citizens were not performing their duties. They were not obeying their duties. There were many of the cases, there were many things which has brought to the notice that what is the purpose of these duties in the constitution. And that's why this Justice Verma Committee was appointed, and it has to give the report on the fundamental duties, and also to suggest that how fundamental duties can be taught to the citizens of India, how they would be performing their duties, how they can follow their duties. So the committee under the chairmanship of Justice J.S. Verma recommended that duty to vote at elections, actively participate in the democratic governance, and to pay taxes should also be included in Article 51A. That the duties which are already there, besides those duties, some more duties which have already been recommended by the Swan Singh Committee, this committee has also recommended the same thing. So this report was basically to achieve the goal of responsible citizenry by creating awareness. Awareness regarding the provisions of the fundamental duties, and awareness regarding imparting the same through the medium of education. Now, when this recommendation came that in the education, in the schools, in the colleges, the students, they should be taught that what are their fundamental duties. So after this report, many of the notices and many of the circulars and notifications have been issued and to the educational institutions, and that is how these duties can be taught to the citizen, to the children, to the person concerned. Then after this J.S. Verma committee, another development regarding fundamental duties was that of a National Commission to review the working of Constitution. Commission was appointed, and that commission has also suggested on how to give the effect to the fundamental duties of the citizens, and to determine the crucial question whether Article 51A served its purposes or not. And if it is not fulfilling the purpose, if it is not serving the purpose for why it has been incorporated in the Constitution, then the reasons for the failure of implementing Article 51E. As to what are the reasons. So this NCW, National Commission for the Review of the Working of Constitution, it has submitted its report in 2000, and the commission recommended the same as has been recommended by J.S. Verma committee. And at the same time, the commission said that the primary step required by the union government and the state government is just to sensitize the people. And when this sensitization would be there, then more and more citizens would be able to know as to what are their duties. Because once the duties have been incorporated in the Constitution, then only those persons who are related with, either they are belonging to the legal discipline or the advocates, that the persons who are there to read the Constitution, only those persons are aware that there are certain portions like fundamental duties. But a common man, the citizens, how could they be made aware? How they may be made aware that there are certain duties which they have to perform? So here the recommendation of this commission was basically to take some steps which are required by the union government, by the state governments, to sensitize the people and just to create a general awareness of the provisions of the fundamental duties amongst the citizens. Similarly, as has been given by the recommendation by the Justice Verma committee. So, if we think of the incorporation of the fundamental duties, whether they are important or not, we know that these duties play an important role in India. And the aim to reach a specified area is very, very important. And we find that if we perform these duties, that can be accomplished the citizens' basic responsible citizenry. They can perform the duties, and at the same time, the criteria of advancement, which cannot be accomplished without citizens performing their duties, can also be fulfilled. So, how this criteria can be fulfilled, how this accomplishment of the duties by the citizens can be there. And similarly, the question that comes to the one's mind is that how these fundamental duties can be a means of achieving the responsible citizenry. So first it becomes necessary to know who is a responsible citizen, because these are the duties which are meant only for the citizens. These are the duties which are not meant for the person. These are the duties which are meant for the citizens only. So how we can know that a person becomes a citizen is a responsible citizen? And what are those criteria in which we can say that the citizen is irresponsible? So a responsible citizen is one who performs his social, moral, ethical obligations and his duties towards the state and the fellow citizens. That is, the duties towards others, the duties towards the institution, duties towards the nation, duties towards the society, duties towards the civil society, duties towards the parents, duties where the person is living. So there are many duties, and these duties, if these duties are being performed, then it can be considered that the citizen is a responsible citizen. And fundamental duties, we know, are the guiding principles for the citizens. and they have to perform their duties, and they have to be very, very truthful also and responsible towards their state. So we see that though these duties are not enforceable, but the courts have taken into consideration these duties also when they have got the cases of the violation of fundamental rights. So it is not confined that the citizen has to perform the duties, but if the citizen goes to the court of law for the violation of the fundamental rights, then to make the citizen responsible, the court has also taken care of those fundamental duties. And you see that if a court is to decide the or it has to enforce the fundamental rights, the court has read all the parts of the constitution, and it has sometimes refused even to enforce a fundamental rights at the instance of the individual who has patently violated any of the fundamental duties which have been specified in Article 51A. You just take the example of Javed versus State of Haryana. That is very important case, which is a very, very glaring example also regarding the fundamental duties and the fundamental rights, a clash between the fundamental duties and the fundamental rights. And here the Supreme Court held that the fundamental rights have to be read with fundamental duties and the directive principles of the state policy, and they cannot be read in isolation. So merely because the duty is not justiciable or legally speaking, the duty is not backed by any sanctions for disobedience, it doesn't mean that it has no importance. It is still regarded a rule of law that must be followed. So Javed Haryana case, that was related to the law which has been made by the Haryana Assembly regarding the more, if there are more than 2 children, then the person cannot contest the election of this local governance. And that was held to be a duty, also a part of the fundamental duty, and the court has also upheld the law which has been enacted by the Haryana Assembly. Then at the same time, if you see the Supreme Court in AIMS Students Union versus AIMS, it has again held that the fundamental rights and fundamental duties should be given equal importance. So when it comes for the importance of the duties, when it comes to make more and more responsible citizenry, when it comes to make more and more responsible citizen who can create a responsible society also, then the court has also taken a good lead while interpreting and reading the fundamental rights and fundamental duties by giving them the equal importance. You see, MC Mehta case, there are many cases in the name of the MC Mehta which are related to the environmental issues. But when we find this MC Mehta case, which has made compulsory for all educational institutions to teach the students the natural environment, because as I told you, this natural environment, or to keep this natural environment is one of the fundamental duty of every citizen. So how it can be brought, the citizens can be made aware. And here the Supreme Court has taken the lead that it has made compulsory that in all the educational institutions, the students, they must read what is the natural environment and the pros and cons of the natural environment. And it has also issued the directions to the central government and to make it a part of their curriculum and to the educational institutions, and to citizens on maintaining the healthy ecology and just to preserve the natural environment. And you see in the educational institutions at UG level and otherwise also, this environmental studies is one of the part of their curriculum now, so that they are aware that this is the environment and they have to keep pace with and they have to maintain the healthy ecology on the basis of the sustainable development and various other principles which can carry the natural environment for this generation and for the future generation also. So this is also one of the fundamental duty, and the court has taken lead by giving the directions to the concerned stakeholders so that they may brought this in the curriculum. And this is the part now. Similarly, in Rangnath Mishra, he was the Chief Justice of India, versus Union of India. So he wrote a letter and he addressed this letter to the President of India at that time, just to pass some directions to the state government, so that regarding the fundamental duties, awareness can be raised by educating the citizens. And so this letter was taken up by the Supreme Court as a red petition, and at the same time, when this letter was addressed by the then Chief Justice of India, when he retired, to the President of India, then this National Commission for Review of the Constitution was also working on that. So this Supreme Court, when it took as a writ petition, the National Commission has also submitted its report to the government, which recommended the government to create awareness among the citizens and follow the procedure as laid down by the Verma Committee report regarding implementation or implementing the fundamental duties. So in all these three aspects, we see the Verma Committee report, the National Commission for Review of the Constitution, and this Rangnath Mishra letter, which has been accepted by the Supreme Court as a writ petition. In all these three, there were directions and recommendations given just to make the citizen aware about their fundamental duties, so that if they perform their duties, then they can create a good society, a healthy society, a responsible society also. Similarly, if you see Minerva Mills case also, Minerva Mills, that was having so many issues decided by the Supreme Court, but regarding fundamental duties, it has also observed that there may be the rules which may impose the obligations on the individual or the authority. Though they may not be enforceable by the court of law. It doesn't mean that they give rise to the right to another person. If one is not performing the duty, then it doesn't become others' right, but it will still be a legal rule, because it just prescribes a norms of the conduct to be followed by the individual or by the authority concerned. So this ruling of Minerva Mills was also very important in reference that we have to take the fundamental duties and we have to read the fundamental rights equally as the fundamental duties, and to make a balance between the fundamental rights and fundamental duties to come out with the with the responsible citizenry, so that they may not be conscious about their rights only, they may also work for their duties also. And one more important thing about the fundamental duties is that when we say about the nature that it is not justiciable, but you find that in order to give some legal teeth to the fundamental duties, there exist some of the legislations which have given the enforceability to some of the fundamental duties also. For example, if you see the National Insult to National Honors Act, Prevention of Insult to National Honors Act of 1950 and 71, then Protection of the Civil Rights Act, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, Representation of People, Environment Protection Act, very importantly, Forest Conservation Act, and many of the acts which are related to the women, like indecent representation of the women, so immoral trafficking, etc. So we find that directly or indirectly, these legislations have imposed the obligations, which is to provide the specifications, penalties, punishments, and the acts as stringent regulations. So fundamental duties, though they are non-justiciable, but these duties have been read by the Supreme Court along with the fundamental rights and directive principles, and they are also being made applicable. Secondly, various legislations are there. So in present scenario, it needs to be ascertained whether fundamental duties that are non-justiciable can be the means of establishing a responsible citizenry. Can these duties be a reminder to the citizens to create a free, healthy, and responsible society? And the answer is simply yes. Because the court is in favor of the implementation of duties by reading them in the fundamental rights, in the directive principles of the state policy. The legislature is there for implementation of the duties in the shape of enacting many of the laws which are related to one or the other fundamental duties. And at the same time, those laws are also providing for the punishment, for providing the penalties, and many specifications are there with these stringent regulations. So the fundamental duties can serve as a reminder to the citizens to create a free, healthy, and responsible society in several ways. For example, these duties can promote the civic consciousness. When I say civic consciousness, then because the fundamental duties outline the responsibilities of the citizens towards the nation and the society, so they remind that the individuals that they have a role to play in shaping the community they live in. And by fulfilling their duties, the citizens develop a sense of civic consciousness and actively contribute to the betterment of the society. And secondly, if we see that fundamental duties also emphasize the importance of respecting and upholding the dignity of all the individuals, promoting harmony also, and to strive the unity of the nation. So if a citizen is adhering to these duties, then the citizen can create an inclusive and cohesive society. So where the people from diverse background can coexist and thrive together by performing these duties and fostering the social cohesion at the same time. Then at the same time, I can also say that yes, these duties can create responsible society because these fundamental duties encourage the citizens to actively participate in the democratic process and to exercise their rights responsibly and to engage in the activities that promote the common good. So this all includes the participation in abiding by the laws, in participating in the elections, contributing to the development of the nation. And all these things are very important. And the voluntary initiatives which have been taken by the community services, those are also the part. The only thing is that we are having a very big and large population. Number of the citizens is very higher. But one thing on which we have to think is that it is not that all the citizens or the majority of citizens, they are performing their duties. But even if the few citizens, if they are performing their duties, then this can create a responsible society, because if one is performing, other will see and they will also try to follow, and they will also try to perform their duties regarding, if you see the fundamental duties which is related to the need to protect and improve the natural environment. So by being conscious of the environmental impact and adopting sustainable practices, citizens can contribute and create a healthier and ecological balance in the society. So this involves the actions at the conserving resources, minimizing waste, and promoting environmental awareness. So once we talk about the environmental awareness or duty to ensure the environmental responsibility to protect and improve the environment, natural environment, then it is not a thing which a single citizen has to do, but it is something which is a group of a collective right or a group right on which one has to think that if one is going against or to damage or destroy the natural environment, it will harm the others also. So in that way, we can find that this can also create a responsible citizen if the citizen is to think in favor of managing, protecting, and preserving the natural environment by adopting sustainable practices. Then ethical standards also, that is relating towards the fellow citizens, to the society, to the nations, they can promote value such as integrity, honesty, and the sense of social justice also. So by adhering to these principles, the citizens can contribute. They can establish an ethical and accountable society where the corruption and the malpractices can be minimized. So fundamental duties that instill the sense of responsibility among citizens, and these duties also reminding them that the rights they enjoy are accompanied by the corresponding duties. So the very important thing is that to understand, to make the society, or to create a citizen as a free, healthy, and responsible society by the use of the fundamental duties, by the performance of the fundamental duties. It is important that fundamental duties, when it serves as the reminders, their effective implementation and realization that also requires collaborative efforts between all the stakeholders. As I initially told you, the government, the civil society, organizations, the educational institutions, and the individual themselves. As this FDP is going on to make the participants aware about the constitutional values and fundamental duties as one of the part. So this is something which is an action, which is a step towards the collaborative effort to make everyone aware about what are their duties. So if they are not aware earlier, at least they may be aware now that what are their duties and how they can perform their duties. This is not just to have a lecture on these duties that one has when one has participated in this FDP and then heard the lecture on the fundamental duties and then left everything which has been heard. But it is something that the participants who are here, they can know that what are the fundamental duties. They can take it to their students, they can take it to the others in the society where they are living, that these are their duties, they have to follow. So by going by one citizen to two citizens, it may come to the community level. And when the civil society is to perform the duties and the citizens have to perform the duties in that civil society, then naturally we can create a very healthy society, a responsible society by making this fundamental duty as a reminder to the citizens that they are not to abuse the rights. They must also be aware about the duties they owe to their nation, they owe to their society, they owe to their fellow citizens. So this is a very, very important aspect. Then on the question whether by incorporating of Article 51A in the Constitution, is that enough to establish a responsible citizenry? I mean that fundamental duties can be said as sufficient means of achieving responsible citizenry. So I would say that insertion of fundamental duties, no doubt, they are the positive step to strive for a responsible citizenry. But with the changing socio-economic fabric of the society, we need to have more and more fundamental duties as supplementary duties, as have been recommended by the committees and commissions, like duty to vote, duty to pay taxes, duty to help the victims of the accidents, premises to be clean, and many more duties which are to be the part of these fundamental duties to make the citizens responsible. Because I was just going through one of the video which has been sent in some of the group regarding the payment of the income taxes. So the main problem faced by the Indian government as far as the tax matters are concerned are the tax gap, the problems related to the tax planning, tax avoidance, and tax evasion. And there are many cases also on that point, McDowell case, then Vodafone case regarding the tax evasion and all that thing. So the point here is that if there would be a duty and obligation on the person to pay the taxes, then they will have to follow those, and to some extent the duties have to be made also enforceable by the court of law, at least so that these fundamental duties can be enforced in the court of law, and the court has not only to read with the fundamental rights or other provisions, but as a fundamental duties also, because fundamental duties, though they are not justiciable, are in some manner or the other, we find that they are striving to achieve the responsible citizenry and the norms of the civic society. But inclusion of the supplementary duties and at the same time making them to some extent enforceable, we can hope for a responsible society with responsible citizens also. But nevertheless, the courts are doing their best, the legislature is doing their best. The duties portion, which is the part in chapter 4A of the Constitution, that has provided the duties, those duties are enforceable either by the court's decisions or by the legislatures, by the various legislation which had been enacted by the competent bodies. And in that way, we can say the fundamental duties are striving to achieve the responsible citizenry and the norms of the civic society. And it is my humble request to the participants also that they must also think about the duties, that as to what are the duties and how they perform their duties. So if a single citizen will perform the duty at his or her own level, and all the others will also perform their duties in the same way, then we'll find that there would be no need of making them justiciable, but duty as being followed. Because you see that initially when we say that the fundamental duty, it was not a fundamental duty, it was a moral duty of every child that he or she has to take care of the parents. And we see that with the changes in the society where we are going, that the children, they are not maintaining their parents, and then the law has to come forward, then the legislature has to come forward for making a law for the senior citizens, for the maintenance of the senior citizens. So we have to see that where we are going, where the society is going. We are all educated persons, and we must think that if we perform our duty, and we can say the others also to perform their duties, in that way we can really create a responsible society. We can also achieve this responsible citizenry by following fundamental duties. So with that, I thank the participants for their patience hearing. And if there is any question, then you can ask the question on this, whatever I have spoken to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am.